Hey there, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. The ocean stays quiet around me, the kind of quiet where every small sound has its place. Water moves along the hull in steady slaps. The loose panel inside the cabin shifts when the boat rolls, reminding me that I never got around to fixing it. My fishing line scrapes against the railing as I pull it in again and find the hook bare for the third day straight. I sit there for a moment, staring at the empty hook, trying to remember the last time I pulled up anything worth eating. My name is Mark. Before the world collapsed, I worked at a marina that mostly existed so wealthy weekend boaters could complain about engines they never maintained. I tied knots for people who did not know how, patched hulls that scraped against docks, and kept old motors alive long enough for someone else to break them again. I never thought any of that would matter once the outbreak hit. But those small skills kept this little cabin boat running long enough for me to get out when the city lost control. I did not steal it out of greed. I took it because the alternative was staying on a burning shoreline, with crowds pushing each other toward whatever waited there. Now the boat is almost out of fuel. The tarp sail I rigged pulls us sideways more than forward, and I spend most days drifting wherever the wind decides to shove me. The sky is a dull grey with no clear sun to judge time. My stomach does most of the time keeping now. I drink a slow mouthful of rainwater from a jug and put it back immediately. If I finish it too fast, I will have nothing for the next storm. The radio sits on the small shelf next to the wheel. I keep it turned off, because the few times I switch it on, I hear nothing helpful. Static, distant calls for help, someone crying, someone warning others to stay away from a shoreline whose name I can barely make out. Every transmission drains the battery, and every response would invite someone to track me. Months ago, I listened more. I heard enough broken conversations to know nobody is organizing rescues out here. No Navy, no Coast Guard, just scattered calls from people trying to survive one more night. After a while, I learned that silence can be a shield. I lean back and look at the horizon. The ocean looks empty at first glance, but it never truly is. Sometimes I see the dark outline of a drifting sailboat with torn canvas and no signs of life on board. Sometimes a capsized hull floats past, rolling in the swell. A few weeks ago, I watched a massive cruise ship in the distance, angled to one side, windows dark, nothing moving across the decks. I stayed as far from it as I could. Too many levels, too many unseen places where the infected could be waiting without a sound. Today, something different sits in the fog. At first, it looks like a smudge on the horizon, nothing more than another trick of distance and haze. I narrow my eyes and wait, letting the wind move the fog instead of trying to guess too early. The shape holds. It grows. I straighten up and brace myself against the rail because the boat shifts under me when I try to stand fast. As the mist thins, the shape becomes more defined. A flat, towering wall rises out of the water. Color breaks through next, faded blue, chipped red, dull gray, stacked blocks arranged in uneven rows. Shipping containers. A cargo ship. My first reaction is not excitement, it is suspicion. A vessel that big would not just drift out here without power unless something went very wrong on board. That means crew. Crew means infection. If none of them survived, the dead are still somewhere inside. If some of them survived, then someone already picked through everything useful or turned it into a guarded camp that will not welcome a stranger in a small boat. Still, I count the reasons I cannot ignore it. My fuel is low, my fishing line is worn, and my hooks are bending. My water collection setup is one bad storm away from ripping free. My boat has no insulation and nights are getting colder. A ship that size is shelter, storage, equipment, tools, food, maybe even medicine if the containers hold something more than junk. It is also a trap if I misjudge it. I angle the little boat toward the cargo ship and loosen the tarp sail. The wind helps, but the approach is slow. The ship grows from a block into a giant wall of steel and color. The bow is high, the name half rubbed away by salt and time. Letters remain, chipped and rusted. I read Pacific, and some numbers, nothing more. The hull has patches of orange rust around the waterline. Some containers near the stern are missing, leaving empty gaps. A few hang at crooked angles, held by bent metal and twisted cables. No lights, no engine noise, no smoke. The entire thing floats in a slow, lazy drift. The sea is mild today, just enough swell to roll my boat slightly and make the cargo ship sway with a heavy, delayed rhythm. I circle wide at first, staying out of easy sight of the decks. The ship is so tall that the main deck blocks most of my view. I catch glimpses between container stacks as I move. No one leans on the rail. No flags move in any breeze. I scan for obvious signs of life. Laundry on a line, tarps, smoke trails, homemade antennas. Anything that says someone claimed this already. I see nothing. Only rust and dirt and seagulls resting on railings, watching me with dull eyes. Seagulls do not sit calmly near busy people. That is one quiet vote in my favor. I steer closer to the stern. The back of the ship steps down in levels, with ladders and metal stairways climbing the outside. I spot something better than that. A pilot ladder hangs from one opening in the hull, near the waterline. It is a long rope ladder with wooden rungs, the kind used when harbor pilots climbed aboard. The end drags in the water and rises again as the swell moves. It looks old, swollen from soaking, but still attached higher up. That is my way in. My hands tighten around the wheel. This is the moment where I should decide if I am going to act or back off. I imagine another week on the little boat, counting hooks and hoping storms do not tear the rail off. Then I imagine sleeping in a room with steel walls and a real door with a lock, and maybe food that is not just thin fish and stale crackers. The choice is not a real choice. I bring the small boat in. I take it slow. The last thing I want is to smash my bow into the cargo ship and crack it. I kill the engine and let momentum slide me in. When I get close enough, I grab the ladder end with my left hand and hold my boat with the right. Rope scrapes my skin. It smells of salt and mildew. The hull beside me rises straight up, a solid wall of metal. No climbing holds. If the ladder fails, there is no second option. I tie my boat to one of the lower rungs with a quick knot. I check it twice. I sling my backpack over my shoulders. Inside is my small water bottle, a handful of crackers, my basic first aid kit, and a hammer and long screwdriver that pass for weapons. A kitchen knife sits in a sheath on my belt. I wish I had anything better, but this is what I walked out of the marina with. Then I start climbing. The ladder sways with every step. My boots press into the wet wood. The rungs shift and groan. I climb in short, careful movements. Water bumps the small boat against my legs once, then again. The rope scrapes loudly against the hull. I stop and listen. No sound from above. No shuffling feet. No voices. Only the quiet wash of water and distant gull cries. When I reach the opening, I hook an elbow over the edge and pull myself into a low entry hatch. The metal is cold under my forearm. I slide in and roll to my side, then get to my knees and look around. I am in a small, sheltered deck area, a kind of maintenance platform near the stern. To my left, steel steps climb toward the main deck. To my right, another door leads deeper into the ship. The air inside the opening smells stale and sour, with a faint underlying touch of diesel and something old that I do not want to label yet. I pull the ladder up by a few rungs and tie it off so my small boat will not drift free. Then I take out the hammer and screwdriver, one in each hand, and move toward the stairs. My footfalls echo in the metal space. I try to place each step gently, but there is no real way to be quiet on steel stairs. Every tread rattles. At the top of the stairs, the world opens. I step onto the main deck, surrounded by walls of containers stacked in rows. The sky looks close between them. The layout feels like narrow city streets made out of steel boxes. The paint is faded and streaked with rust. Numbers and shipping logos mark some containers. Many have dents from rough loading, some so deep that the doors look warped. I stay low and move between two container rows, keeping the central aisle in my peripheral vision. I keep listening for any sound that is not wind or seagulls. For a while there is nothing, just the faint creaks of the ship shifting on the water. Then I hear something new, a dry scuff, a slow shuffle. It comes from near the bow, far ahead. I freeze and rest my shoulder against the side of a container. The sound repeats. It is not steady. It comes in short movements, then stops. Something is moving up there. I move along the edge of the containers in short bursts, checking each gap and corner before I cross it. Part of me wants to turn back and pretend I never saw this ship. The rest knows there is no easy life waiting behind me. I moved past easy months ago. I edge closer until the bow area opens up. There is more space there, fewer containers, and a straight view to the front of the ship. Near the center of that open deck, I see a figure. It stands with its back turned to me, wearing a dirty coverall. The fabric is stained and stiff. The head tilts slowly left and right as if listening to something only it hears. The skin visible at the neck looks grey and dry. The hands hang awkwardly, fingers curled. It stands near a rusted winch and a coil of heavy rope. An infected crewman. I have seen many of them over the last year. I know the way they move. I know the way they turn too quickly when a sound catches their attention. I know their focus does not shift away easily once they notice someone living. I stay still and watch him. The body sways a little with the ship. The head twitches toward a squeak on a far railing, then settles again. If there is one, there are more. That is a rule I learned early. Infection spread fast in closed spaces. A cargo ship is nothing but closed spaces. I back up slowly, keeping my eyes on him until the container hides him again. Then I turn slightly and slide along the wall. My hands sweat against the hammer and screwdriver handles. I feel the old urge to rush. I do not. Rushing is noise. Noise is death. Instead of returning to the ladder right away, I look for other access points. I need to know where the bridge is, where the living quarters sit, where the likely food stores might be. If I leave now, I will have to come back blind again later. I do not want that. I spot the superstructure rising toward the stern, that white block of levels where the bridge and crew cabins usually are. Windows look out over the deck. Some are cracked, some are smeared with grime from the inside. Metal stairs climb the side up through several floors. That is where I will find answers. That is also where I will find more infected. I move to the stairwell entrance and pause. The door is slightly open. It has marks along the frame where something heavy slammed against it over and over. Someone tried to break in or out at some point. I nudge it open with the hammerhead and peer inside. A narrow hall runs away along the interior wall, with another set of stairs leading up and down. The lights are dead. The only illumination comes from small square windows at each landing. The air inside is thicker. I smell sweat, old food, and something sour that has settled into metal and fabric and refuses to leave. I take the stairs up, one step at a time, keeping my shoulders turned slightly so I can move back down quickly if I have to. The hall on the next level opens into a row of doors with small cabin numbers. Some stand open, some closed. I move past the open ones first and flick my eyes inside. Beds unmade, clothes on the floor, a picture taped above one bunk, a mug tipped over and dried on the small desk. No bodies in these rooms. Halfway down the hall, I hear another sound, a wet, dragging noise. I stop and lean close to one closed door with a metal latch. Something scrapes softly on the other side. Then there is a dull thud. A low growl hums through the metal and dies out. Someone turned in there, or more than one. They cannot open the door. The latch is still set from this side. The metal vibrates faintly with each movement. I step back and leave it closed. I am not here to clear the ship in one day. I am here to learn the layout and decide if this floating tomb is worth the risk. On the upper level, the hall leads to the bridge. The door here is partially blocked by a tipped chair and a fallen cabinet. I ease them aside just enough to slip through. The bridge is a wide room with many windows looking over the sea and deck. Most of the control panels are dark. Paper charts lie scattered on the floor. Coffee cups stand where someone put them down and never picked them up again. Near the middle of the room, two bodies lie crumpled in old uniforms. Their clothes match the coveralls I saw below. Their skin is dry and pulled tight. One has a large dark patch on the chest where some wound ended his life. Their eyes are dull and sunk. They do not move. They turned at some point, then someone ended them. Or they died in some other way after infection burned through them. I cannot tell. I keep my distance anyway and watch for any twitch. There is none. Next to the captain's chair, a small logbook rests on the panel. Open. The handwriting inside is cramped and rushed. Dates run in sequence up to a point about 6 or 7 months ago, then stop. I read pieces. Port closed. Orders to hold offshore until cleared. Crewman sick. Radio from other ship reports infection on board. Then, later, contained in cabin 3. Do not open. After that, the lines grow less neat. More fever. Fighting below deck. Engine room locked down. The final entries barely hold together. One word repeats several times across the page. Drifting. I close the logbook. I know enough. From the bridge windows, I can see most of the deck. There are at least 3 visible infected moving slowly between the container rows. They wander without direction, responding only when something creaks too loud or a gull takes off in a burst of noise. There are likely more below. The ship is not empty. I stand there for a while and think. My small boat cannot keep me alive much longer. This ship can, if I can control it. I do not need the whole thing. I only need one safe area with controlled access, and a supply chain from containers I can reach without walking through a maze of hungry dead every time. The plan forms in pieces. First, mark safe and unsafe zones. Second, find a living space close to exit routes. Third, identify containers that might hold practical supplies rather than junk. Fourth, figure out if I can keep this thing from crashing into rocks the first time a real storm hits. That is long term. Short term, I need to get back to my boat, confirm it is still there, and bring some of my gear aboard. There is no point thinking about cargo if I get stranded without water, because one loose knot failed. I move back down through the stairwells, marking the doors that have movement behind them in my head. First level, cabin door with scraping. Second level, washroom with the door slightly ajar that smells wrong, so I pull it fully shut and jam a broken broom handle through the handle bracket. I move quiet, but my presence still stirs sounds from behind some doors. The ship is not awake all at once. It is half sleeping through disaster. On the main deck again, I keep to the container shadows and circle toward the stern. The infected on the bow remains where he was, head turning in short jerks. One more now stands near him, swaying and bumping against the rail. If the number on deck doubled in the time I was inside, then there are many more below, waiting for noise or scent. I reach the stair down to the maintenance platform, and then the hatch where the ladder waits. I check the knot holding my small boat. It is still tight. The boat bobs gently against the hull. Everything is where I left it. That small detail sends a wave of small relief through me. Climbing down is harder than going up. Now the drop is visible, and the water looks closer in all the wrong ways. The ladder swings more. Once, a swell lifts the boat just enough to tap the bottoms of my boots. I grit my teeth and keep going until my feet land on the deck. I move fast to untie and push away from the hull before the ladder hooks the bow and drags me back under the ship. When I am clear, I turn the engine over and it coughs into life. The sound is louder now in my own ears, but out here, it vanishes fast into open air. I steer into a slow circle and look back at the cargo ship. From a distance, it returns to being a silent steel wall with colored blocks. The infected on deck are too small to see from here. No one stands at the railing watching me. I drop anchor a few hundred yards away, close enough to keep the ship in sight, far enough that I can move if some other survivors appear and see both of us. I spend that night restless, waking at every hollow thump from the direction of the larger hull. The ocean carries sound strangely. Sometimes it is nothing but containers shifting in their metal locks. Sometimes it is a low growl that might be wind, or might be something else. In the morning, the sky is clearer. I eat a small portion of crackers and drink just enough water to wet my throat. Then I pull out the short scrap of paper where I keep rough counts. Food, low. Fuel, very low. Hooks, damaged. My future if I ignore that cargo ship, short. So I make the choice I knew I would make the moment I saw it. I am going to take that ship. I spend the next hours preparing. I move everything that matters from the small boat into one pile. Spare rope, tools, the rainwater jugs. A small stash of canned beans I took from a half-flooded dock store months ago. My bedding. I look at the pile and see how little of my old life remains. Then, I add one more thing. A small red gas can with the last fuel. If I ever have to run the ship engines for any reason, that can will not matter. But I might need the fuel for a generator or some other machine inside. It is worth carrying. Before I head back, I think about weapons. The hammer and screwdriver are fine for one infected in a hallway if I hit first. They are not enough for a swarm, or for another human with bad intentions. I search the small boat again and dig deeper in the storage under the bunk. I find the emergency flare gun and a box with 8 flares. I never used them. Where would I call for help now? Today, they become something else. Firepower in tight spaces. Not ideal, but it beats empty hands. I lash the gear together into 2 loads I can carry on my back and chest. Then I return to the ladder. This second climb feels different. First time I was a visitor. Now I am a thief trying to turn into an owner. The ship sounds busier today, not because more infected arrived, but because now I am listening for every hint of them. Footsteps echo faintly through metal when something moves 2 decks above. A muffled thud rattles a door far down the hall. Somewhere deep in the hull, a chain or cable shifts and clinks. The ship feels alive in a sick way. I decide on a base of operations. On the level below the bridge, I find a corner cabin with only one main door and a small porthole. No adjoining doors. The bed is narrow but solid. There is a built-in cabinet. The room smells less foul than others, maybe because whoever used it left early. I clear the few scattered clothes and personal items to one pile and block the door with a heavy chair. I can move it quickly if I need to, but it adds a bit of friction between me and anything outside. Trip after trip, I carry gear from the small boat. Rainwater jugs first, food next, tools and rope after that. Each time I go up and down the ladder, my hands get more sore. Each time I step onto the main deck, I check my surroundings again. The infected on the bow still roam their small area. One more now leans against the rail near the midsection. I mark the safe paths in my mind. On the third trip, I nearly walk straight into one. I come around a container stack, focusing on the sound of my own boots. When I step out of the narrow space, I see him standing 10 feet away, facing a wall. He wears a stained white cook's jacket. Grey material clings to his shoulders. His hair is matted and dried. He turns faster than I expect at the small clink of my water jug. His eyes lock on me. His mouth opens. A low noise comes out, rough and broken. Then he moves. Arms stretch forward, fingers crooked. His steps are uneven, but driven. I step back and drop the bag on my shoulder. The weight hits the deck with a dull thud. I pull the hammer up and raise the screwdriver like a short spear. My hands are not steady. His shoes scrape across the metal as he closes the gap. I do not aim for the head right away. It is smaller than people make it sound in stories. I aim for his knee. The hammer cracks into it with a solid impact. The leg buckles. He drops to one side and slams into the container, then swings his arms toward me from the ground. I jump back a step. His fingers catch my pant leg and tug. I kick hard at his arm and feel something give. While he tries to twist over, I move behind him and jab the screwdriver down at the side of his neck and base of the skull. The first hit glances off bone. The second sinks deeper. He jerks once and then stops moving. The only sound for a moment is my own breath, fast and shallow. I listen hard for any answer from the rest of the deck. Sometimes infected react to another body dropping. Sometimes they do not. This time, nothing changes. The 3 near the bow keep their slow, senseless paths. I drag the cook's body behind one container, also for my own mind. I do not want to see him every time I walk that path. That small fight reminds me how close everything is here. One mistake, One loud clatter, and I will be stuck swinging hand tools in a tight hallway, while a dozen dried hands grab for me. If I want to survive on this ship for more than a week, I need control. I start by writing rough notes on the cabin wall. I use a marker I found in the bridge. On one section of the wall, I draw a simple layout. Main deck, container lanes, stairwells, bridge level, my chosen cabin. I mark cabin doors that have infected behind them with a black X. I mark safe halls with circles. It is not perfect, but it turns my memory into something real. Next, I think about noise. If I can lure infected into confined parts of the ship and then lock them in, or drop them through open hatches, I can clear key routes. On the level below the main deck, there are storage rooms and workshop areas that I can seal from the outside. I decide those will become holding spaces. I take a small wrench from one of the tool rooms and carry it to the bow. I stay in cover behind containers until I am near the winch where the first infected stood. He is still there, joined now by two more. Their clothes hang loose. One is barefoot. Their feet leave faint smears on the deck where whatever dried in them still flakes. I flick the wrench against the rail once. The clang is sharp and rings across the deck. All three heads snap toward the sound. Then they start moving toward me. I back up into the container maze and walk at a steady pace, letting the echoes guide them. Every few seconds, I tap the wrench against metal again, keeping their attention. I lead them toward one of the open stairwells that goes down into the interior. The hatch door is wedged open. Below, a dim hallway runs along the hull. I step just inside and make another noise. The infected push through the door in a staggered line. Their feet catch on the small lip of the hatch, but they do not care. They only see me. I retreat down the hall, counting doors. 1, 2, 3. The fourth door on the left is the storage room I picked earlier. Its walls are solid, no porthole. I go in, make sure the far wall is clear, then step back into the hall and bang the wrench hard against the frame. The sound is painful in the confined space. They hurry now, as much as their ruined bodies allow. The first reaches me just as I step back into the storage room. I move around the edge of the door and shove the second one in with him. The third stumbles following their motion. Once all three are inside, I slam the door shut and throw the latch. Hands hit the inside metal. Hollow thuds shake the frame. I stand there holding the handle even though the latch is enough. Sweat runs down my back. It is an ugly method, but it works. I repeat it with others through the day, always careful to limit the numbers I handle at once. I never bring more than 3 or 4 into one trap. Some doors do not hold. On one room, a rotten latch bends, and the door bursts outward under their weight. I have to scramble up the stairs and escape onto the deck with 3 infected snapping at my heels. I get away, but I mark that hole with a big line of black on my cabin wall later. Unsafe. By the time the sky starts to turn darker through the porthole, I have a clearer picture of my new prison. The infected I can see on the open deck are fewer. Most now stand behind storage doors that shudder occasionally when they move. The halls I need most are clearer. There are still many I have not met yet. Too many closed doors. Too many sounds deeper inside. But I now have a safe path from the ladder to my cabin and from my cabin to a handful of containers near the stern cranes. That is enough for the first day. I eat in my new cabin, sitting on the narrow bed with my back to the wall. I chew slowly and keep my ears open. The ship moans and ticks around me. Somewhere below, a group of infected slam themselves into a barrier for a while, then go still again. The rhythm reminds me of waves, only without any calm. At night, I cannot sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see the cook's face turning toward me, or imagine doors swinging open without warning. I keep the flare gun within reach under the blanket. My hand stays on it more than I want to admit. When I do drift off, I wake at the slightest creak and stare at the cabin door until the sound passes. The next morning, I move to the first group of containers. Most are locked with heavy mechanisms that would need proper tools or cutting equipment. Some, though, were either left unsecured or twisted just enough that I can force them open with the long bar I found in the workshop. The first container I crack open holds stacks of boxed kitchen appliances. Toasters, blenders, little coffee machines in bright packaging, all brand new, all wrapped in cardboard and plastic. I stare at them and feel a dull wave of frustration. None of these will cook food without power. The only thing useful here is the cardboard, which can serve as tinder, and some metal parts I could strip in an emergency. I leave most of it and close the doors loosely. The second container has bundles of clothing, plain shirts and pants in multiple sizes, packed in clear plastic. This is better. My own clothes are worn and stained. I grab a fresh set and stuff them in my pack, then think bigger. Extra layers mean warmth. Fabric strips mean bandages. I pull out a few more bundles and stack them near the edge for a later move. On the third container, my luck improves. Inside are pallets of bottled water. Rows and rows of clear plastic bottles shrink-wrapped onto wooden bases. Some plastic has warped slightly, but most bottles look intact. I press a finger against one and feel the familiar give of clean water behind it. My throat tightens at the thought of never having to drink rainwater off a dirty tarp again. Of course, it is not that simple. The container opening is chest height. The pallets are packed deep in. Each bottle I take means lifting, carrying, and storing. But the resource is there now. That changes everything. In another container I find canned goods. Not endless, but enough to matter. The labels are in different languages. Beans, vegetables, fruit syrup, meat products with long shelf lives. Some cans have dents and rust at the edges, so I set those aside. The rest I pile near the door and lug back to my cabin, one crate at a time. The work is slow, hard, and constant. That is good. It keeps my head from sinking into old memories. Every time my mind drifts toward the first weeks of the outbreak, to the harbor in chaos and sirens echoing over the water, I find another crate to move or another door to test. 3 days pass in that rhythm, clearing small areas, moving supplies, marking the map on my wall. The ship starts to feel less unknown and more like a battered building that I can patch one piece at a time. I still sleep badly. The infected are still everywhere behind the order I carved out, but I stop jumping at every tiny sound. On the 4th day, I reach the engine room. I find the access hatch near the center of the ship after following a set of stairs down from the workshop deck. The door here is heavier, with a sign stamped in warning colors. It is slightly open. Someone set a toolbox in the way to stop it from shutting. Inside, the air is stale and hot even with the engines dead. The machinery fills the space with dead weight. Pipes run along the walls. Tools hang on hooks. Gauges on control panels rest at 0. There are 3 bodies here, 2 near the main console, 1 near the door. All of them wear heavy work clothes. All of them are still. One has a wrench clutched in a stiff hand, arm reaching toward a valve that never got turned. I check each one from a safe distance with the end of a long rod. No reaction. They have been dead for months. The infection inside them is spent or dried. I would still never go to sleep near them, but they are no threat now. I look over the controls. I am not a ship engineer. I know small engines, not machines the size of a house. I can see enough to understand why nothing runs. The main control switches are locked in safe positions. The fuel gauge is read near empty. A few indicator panels have handwritten notes taped over them, saying things like, "Do not start coolant problem." Even if I wanted to move this ship, I do not have the fuel or the skill to run these engines for long without blowing something. I accept that. I do not need mobility. I need stability. I inspect the ballast controls instead. Most are manual valves. That I can understand. If I ever have to adjust the tilt of the ship in a storm, I might manage that with time and caution. Back on the main deck later that day, I notice the horizon looks different. Darker in one direction. Clouds stack higher, thicker. The wind has a sharper bite in it. A storm is forming. Storms on a small boat were bad. Storms on a massive cargo ship are something else. You cannot outrun them with a dead engine. You cannot control much. You can only tie down, close up, and hope your anchor or the currents do not slam you into a rock shelf somewhere. I walk the edges of the deck and peer over the side. There is no anchor line down. The ship is free drifting. I feel a small twist in my gut at that. If a strong wind catches the hull wrong, we could end up grinding against some unseen reef miles away from any help. In the afternoon, the first real gusts hit. The ship rocks deeper. Containers groan in their locks. Some of the hanging ones sway in slow arcs that make my stomach tighten. Rain starts as random drops, then thickens. The air turns into a wall of water and noise. I retreat inside and dog down as many hatches as I can reach safely. On the way, I hear infected below responding to the new vibrations. Their voices rise in muffled sounds through floor plates as the storm wakes the metal around them. Back in my cabin, I sit on the bed and feel the ship roll. Loose items on the shelves slide and fall. I pick up what I can and wedge it in place, but there is only so much I can do. Through the porthole, I see nothing but sheets of rain. The worst moment comes near dusk when the ship rolls farther than it has yet. A deep groan runs through the hull. Something heavy shifts down in the container stacks with a boom. For a second, I imagine the whole load breaking free, tearing through the deck, and rolling us onto our side. The sensation of moving never fully leaves. I decide I am done just trusting drift. I grab my flashlight and head back toward the engine room, bracing my shoulder on the walls as I move against the roll. The infected behind closed doors howl louder now, stirred by the motion and the noise. One slams a door so hard that the latch snaps and the door bounces open an inch. I shove it shut again and jam a metal bar through the handles. The impact bruises my palms. In the engine room, the noise from outside is a distant roar. I move to the ballast controls and check the labels again. The ship is tilting slightly towards the port side. If I can move enough water between tanks to counter that, maybe I can keep it from reaching a critical angle. I know I could also make it worse if I open the wrong valves. The thought runs through my head that this might be the most arrogant thing I have tried yet. But sitting and waiting while the ship tips more every hour feels worse. I pick the simplest option. I open one valve that feeds a starboard tank, very cautiously, and stand with my hand on the control, listening. There is a low rush as water shifts. The floor under me vibrates just enough to feel through my boots. After a minute, I close it again and wait. On the next deep roll, the tilt feels a little less sharp. It might be my imagination, might be real. I repeat the process once more, then stop before I convince myself I am a genius and flood something I cannot see. Ships this size went through storms before without my help. I remind myself of that and leave the rest to the hull. The storm goes on into the night. It is long and loud and turns time into a stretched mess. I stay mostly in my cabin, leaving only when some crash sounds too close and I have to make sure a door did not blow open. One of the storage rooms I used for infected bursts its latch, and 3 of them spill into the hallway. I meet them with the flare gun. At that range, the flare slams into the chest of the first one and erupts. Fire spreads across cloth and dried flesh. The infected thrashes and falls into the second. Both tumble against the wall, burning. The third stumbles through the mess, arms flailing. I hit him in the face with the hammer again and again until he stops moving. The smell from the burning bodies is thick and foul, but the flames also finish the job. I open a nearby hatch to let some smoke out and close everything behind me again. When the storm finally eases, the ship settles into a slower motion. My muscles feel drained. My hands are scraped and sore. I drag myself back to the cabin and sit in the doorway for a while, just listening to the new quiet. The next morning, the sea looks different. The waves are low and choppy, leftovers from the night. Debris floats around us. Pieces of broken wood, scraps of plastic, an overturned small boat in the distance. The sky is pale and washed out. Near midday, I see another boat. It is a small inflatable with a hard bottom, pushed along by a low outboard motor. 3 people sit in it, 2 in the back, 1 in the front. They wear mismatched jackets and caps pulled low. The boat cuts across the water in a line that will bring it right past the cargo ship. I step back from the rail and watch from the shadow of a container. The inflatable slows when it gets close. One of the figures in the back points up at the hull. I can hear faint shouts over the water now that the wind is calmer. Words do not carry clearly, but the tone does. Surprise, interest. They circle once, just as I did days ago, checking for signs of life. They do not see me. I keep low. Part of me wants to wave and call out. Human voices cut straight through all the dead noise in this world. The rest of me remembers stories on the radio, and the way some survivors looked at others in the last week before the marina fell, hungry in more ways than one. The boat nudges closer to the hull near the ladder. They have spotted the pilot ladder hanging there. One man in the back stands up and grips the rungs to test them. He seems satisfied. He calls something to the others. That is when I know talk is not going to be the first step with these people. If they board and explore without knowing someone already lives here, they will think it is free. Once they feel that, they will not hand it back. I move quickly to the bridge. From there I have a clear view down the side. I also have access to the old horn and some external speakers. I flip switches and hope the batteries still hold enough charge for one final act. A faint glow comes to one indicator. That is good enough. When the first man starts to climb the ladder, I grab the horn control and press. The sound that erupts from the bow speakers is deep and brutal. It floods the air with a long blast. The entire ship vibrates with it. Down on the ladder, the man flinches and almost loses his grip. The inflatable shifts wildly as the others look up in shock. The horn does more than startle them. It wakes the infected. All over the ship, behind doors and in halls, they respond. I hear the thud of bodies hitting metal. Doors rattle. Voices rise in horrible chorus. On the deck near the midsection, several infected stagger out from behind containers, drawn toward the ladder by the noise and the scent of fresh bodies. One of the survivors on the boat sees them and shouts something. The man on the ladder looks up, sees the figures on the rail above, and drops back into the inflatable. They shove away from the hull in a hurry, the engine revving hard. As they speed off, one of them turns and raises his hand in a rude gesture toward the ship. I cannot hear his words, but I see his mouth move in anger. To him, this place is not a miracle anymore. It is a haunted trap, full of those things, and ruled by some unseen force that can blast a horn that wakes them up. It works. They leave. I stand there gripping the horn control and feel a mix of relief and something darker. I just used the infected as guard dogs. It was efficient. It also means that the next time someone approaches, I might do worse. Days pass after that with no new boats. The cargo ship drifts in slow arcs. I track the sun and guess roughly where we might be. It does not matter too much. As long as we stay off visible reefs and shorelines, open sea is safer than any town. I start a habit of climbing to the bridge roof every morning. From up there, the sea stretches out in every direction. Some days are bright and sharp, sky clear, horizon clean. Other days are dull and colorless, everything blended into one long smear of water and cloud. I scan for masts, smoke, unusual bird patterns, anything that might mean land or other people. Most mornings I see only waves, gulls, and the occasional drifting trash patch. My life settles into circles, cabin to deck, deck to containers, containers to engine room and back. Each loop has a purpose. Check doors, listen for broken latches, move food to storage, check water bottles for leaks. I do not sit idle for long. When I stop moving, old noise creeps in, shouting from the marina, sirens. That first sprint along the dock with other people pushing and yelling as if there was still any order left. I keep those memories in a corner and seal them there with work. I refine my stronghold. Infected in the storage rooms make noise at random, but they are contained. When a door frame warps enough that I do not trust it, I do not stand there and argue with myself. I go to the workshop, find a length of chain or a steel bar, and brace the door shut from the outside. I give up on the idea of ever using that hallway again. This ship is big enough to sacrifice space to safety. The food situation is better than I expected at first. The canned goods are not endless, but there are more than I can move in one day. Bottled water is still the biggest blessing. I fill my cabin with crates until there is barely room to turn around. I leave more in the container itself and mark it on my wall map. One pallet at a time, this ship turns from a random wreck into a warehouse I actually know. After about 2 weeks of this routine, I start thinking bigger about power. So far, I have used only flashlights, candles, and the last life in emergency batteries. That cannot last. The generator room on the lower deck holds 2 big diesel units. Both sit silent now, fuel lines dry. I do not have enough diesel to feed them properly, and I would be deaf and dead from noise before long if I tried. In one container, though, I find something strange and useful. Pallets of boxed camping equipment, tents, lanterns, small gas stoves. Among them, stacked in smaller boxes, are compact solar panels meant for off-grid campsites. I open one box and pull out a panel. It is not large, maybe big enough to power a radio and a light or two, but there are dozens of them. The instruction sheet is simple enough. I have tools. The roof of the bridge gets full sun on clear days. It gives me a project that feels almost normal. I run cables through a cracked vent, mount a line of panels on brackets I bolt to the superstructure, and connect them to a bank of batteries I pull from dead emergency lights. There is a quiet satisfaction in watching a small charge controller blink to life. The first night I flip a switch and a single overhead light in my cabin glows with a weak but steady glow. I feel something close to what regular life used to be. Not comfort, just function. The cost shows up a few days later. The panels draw attention. Birds land on them, leave droppings, pick at the cables. I have to shoo them away. That is a small problem. The bigger one comes from below. To mount the panels, I spent a lot of time walking on the exposed upper surfaces of the ship. I might as well have been ringing a bell. Infected under the decks follow sound. They cannot reason, but they respond to patterns. My footsteps above one stairwell, back and forth, make them gather beneath like some bad audience. On the 5th day after I set up the panels, I head down to check one of the mid-level corridors near the workshop deck. I have been using that route often because it cuts the corner between my cabin and the food containers. As I reach the top of the stairs, I hear more noise than usual from below. Not just a few stray impacts, a steady press of bodies against metal. I step down 2 steps and peer around the corner. The hallway that was mostly clear last week is now a crawling mess. A cluster of infected wedge against a door to one of the storage rooms. The frame bows outward with their pushing. Others stagger behind them, shoving forward without understanding why the ones in front cannot move. More of them wander up and down the hall, bumping into walls and each other. 12 at least, maybe more hidden around the far turn. If any one door in that section fails, I lose not just the room behind it, but the whole corridor. That means no easy path to the workshop. No shortcut to half the ship's tools and some of the food. I know exactly why they are here. My own footsteps, the roof work. Maybe the long horn blast from days ago still echoes down here in their broken heads. It does not really matter what triggered them anymore. What matters is what I do before they push something open that should stay shut. I consider going down there with the hammer and screwdriver. The idea dies fast. With that many, I would be on the floor in seconds. The flare gun might drop 1 or 2, but then I would be stuck in a smoke-choked corridor, with more coming through fire. I pull back from the stairs and focus on the layout instead. There is another access to this level near the stern, a vertical ladder shaft. If I can reach the other end of that hall from downstairs, I might be able to trap this crowd from both sides. Not with my hands, with the ship. I go back up and cross the deck, keeping to quiet steps near container walls. The wind pushes faint spray across the bow, but the weather is calm. That is one blessing. At the stern, I drop down an internal ladder to the lower deck. This level smells worse. Stale air, oil, old sweat, and rot all mixed into something permanent. I breathe through my mouth and move toward the section that runs under the crowded hall above. Here the walls narrow and the air changes. Bulkhead doors break the lower deck into watertight sections. Some are open, some closed with heavy wheel locks. One door has a warning scratched into the paint in a language I barely know. The message is clear enough. Do not open. I listen at each open segment and picture the layout. A low vibration carries through the floor from the infected crowd above. Their shoving echoes through the steel. 2 bulkheads on this level stand wide. If anything pushes through up there, the whole hallway will flood with bodies. I close the first wheel, then the second. Both groan as I force the seals tight. When the final lock clicks, the noise shifts. The infected still pound and scrape, but now the sound stays contained inside that one section. It feels cruel blocking off an entire slice of the ship with living things trapped inside, but pretending they are still people does nothing for me out here. I give myself that reminder and move on. Back in the stairwell, their noise fades into a dull background. Closing those doors buys time and keeps the infection from spreading into the parts of the ship I still need. Every choice pushes me the same direction. Survive in a smaller world or die in a bigger one. I choose smaller. A few weeks blur past. My hands heal and split again. Some nights I get a long stretch of sleep. Other nights I walk the corridors until sunrise, checking every door twice. Dawn after a night like that feels rough. The ship gives back nothing except silence and work. Then the ocean shifts in a way I recognize too well. It happens early in the morning on the bridge roof. I open a bottle of water and smell something wrong. Not rot or fuel. Earth, mud, plants. That smell only comes from shallow water near land. I grab the binoculars and search the horizon. After a long minute, I see a faint broken line off the starboard bow. Low rocks. Maybe an island chain. My stomach tightens. Open water is safe. Shorelines and reefs are a slow death for a drifting ship. I hurry to the chart table. The coordinates mean nothing without engines, but the outlines on one old map match what I see. Shallow reefs, dangerous drafts, warnings in red. We drift wherever the current wants. If the bow catches a rock, the sea will tear this ship apart long before I can react. I study the surface around the hull. Small streaks of foam show the current running at an angle. We are drifting toward the rocks but also sliding along them. If I turn the hull even slightly, we might catch the current and drift past instead of straight in. Mooring lines still lie coiled on deck. Heavy ropes made for ports and tugs. I drag one coil to the stern, tie it to a cleat, and push the rest into the sea. My idea is simple. Create drag on one side so the current pulls harder and turns the bow. The rope stretches and slackens as we move. At first, nothing changes. Then the bow begins to yaw by a small degree. It is barely noticeable, but it is there. To be sure, I drop a second rope from midship. Both lines creak under the strain. An hour later, the worst of the rocks no longer sits directly in our path. The change is slow but real. It gives me room to breathe. One rope snaps under the current with a crack that rings through the air. The broken end whips back and dents the rail. I lose that line, but the ship has already begun to turn. I retreat back inside with aching shoulders and hope the currents finish what I started. We still pass too close. That night, under thick clouds, the hull grinds against something hard. The vibration crawls through the floor, rattling cans off shelves. I sprint to a porthole, but the dark sea hides everything. The grinding lasts only seconds, then stops. The ship steadies as if nothing happened, but I know better. I head to the engine room. A faint pool spreads across the floor from a seam in the far plating. It is not a rush of water, just a slow, steady bleed. The hull is cracked somewhere I cannot see. The ship is wounded. I check the compartment layout on the wall. The breach likely sits in a forward lower section. Each of those compartments can flood without sinking the ship if they remain isolated. If not, water will spread until the whole bow dips under. I move fast through the lower deck, closing every hatch I can remember leaving open. Most seal without trouble. One hangs crooked, bent long ago. I brace it with scrap metal and bars, even though I know it is a weak fix. I keep checking the engine room. The water rises slowly. We have time, but not much. By morning, the bow rides slightly lower. The ship is stable for now, but sagging. If the water stays contained, we survive. If it spreads, we sink. I walk the forward lower decks one last time and gather every useful piece of food or equipment I can carry. Then I seal those hatches permanently and paint a red line across them as a warning to my future self. Past that line is flooded steel and trapped infected. That part of the ship is dead to me. Giving up that space tears something out of me, but clinging to it would only get me killed. Out here, survival means cutting away anything that drags you under. Not all the danger comes from outside. Some grows in my own mouth. A tooth that has been aching for days now pulses with heat and pressure. The gum is swollen and sore. Cold water sends sharp pain through my jaw. Out here, an infected tooth is not an inconvenience. It is a countdown. I check it in a mirror. The root looks dark. Angry. I know what that means. Without help, it will kill me. I search the infirmary. There is a small rusted dental kit and half a bottle of basic pain tablets. These tools were never meant for serious work, but they are all I have. I lay them out in my cabin and boil water. 2 pain tablets go down dry. I sit on the bed, brace my back, clamp the tooth, and pull. The process is rough. The tooth breaks before it gives. My grip slips. Sweat drops into my eyes. When the final piece comes free, I sit doubled over with a cloth pressed into the gap. I rinse with salted water and lie back until the bleeding slows. That night, fever rolls through me in waves. I sweat, shake, drink water, and fight the urge to panic. I take a low dose of antibiotics I promised myself I would save for real emergencies. This is one. 2 days pass with me drifting in and out of sleep. When the fever breaks, I feel hollow but alive. The swelling has gone down. The infection is slowing. I survived it. When I finally stand outside again, the ship feels different. It is the same steel and the same rust, but I am changed. Pulling my own tooth out in a silent metal cabin made something very clear. Nobody is coming. Anything that gets fixed here, I fix alone. Life settles again. The flooded compartment stays where it is. The bow rides low, but the ship drifts on. My solar rig still powers the cabin light and radio. Food is not comfortable, but I ration it well enough. Days slide into each other until one morning breaks the pattern. I am in the bridge eating crackers and canned peaches when something bright flashes on the water. I lift the binoculars. An inflatable approaches, bigger than the last one, with 2 outboards and 4 people on board. One stands in the bow scanning the ship. They come straight in without hesitation. Someone told them where to find me. I kill every visible light, pull up the external ladder, and move to the shadows of the mid-deck. The boat slows at the hull. The man in the bow points at the missing ladder. Another reaches into the bottom of the craft and lifts a rifle. A shot cracks the air. Metal sprays near the rail, where my head was seconds earlier. This is not a negotiation. They want the ship. I run to the bridge. The horn is useless now. It would only confirm I am alive and alert. As I pass a lower stairwell, I hear the trapped infected slamming against a door. For once, I see an opportunity instead of a problem. I grab the flare gun and head to a maintenance catwalk overlooking the boat. The man with the rifle ties a grappling hook to a rope and throws it up. It catches on the second try. He tests it and signals to climb. I step out where they can see me and shout, "Do not come up here. This ship is full." They argue back, asking if I am alone, mocking my warning. The climber starts up the rope. If he reaches the deck, I lose any advantage I have. I fire the flare into a side vent below the rope. Flames burst inside the metal cavity. The echo blasts through the ship's guts. The infected respond with a violent chorus of impacts and screams. The whole structure shakes. The climber freezes. The others stare at the hull as the noise rises. Then one of the lower doors gives way. A handful of infected spill onto an outer catwalk, clawing at the open air. More press behind them. The display is enough. The rifleman fires one last angry shot at the hull, then orders the driver to go. The inflatable tears away across the waves. One of them looks back at me until distance swallows the boat. The infected on the outer catwalk scrape and fall until nothing moves except a few trapped bodies rocking with the ship. I mark that door on my map, another area I can never use again. Back in the bridge, the can of peaches sits where I left it. I eat the rest without tasting it. My hands shake, and I do not try to pretend it is from the sugar. I know what I did. I used the dead as a weapon. That night, the cabin light glows softly as I lie awake. The ship makes its usual noises, but some of them feel heavier now. I chose this path, and I will live with it. Out here, survival is not clean. Days pass. The reefs shrink behind us. The water in the wounded compartment stays level. I check it every morning. Nothing new leaks. My world is smaller than ever, but it holds. And for now, that is enough. The ship drifts through fog banks and bright patches. Sometimes I hear far distant noises that are not mine. A faint boom that might be thunder or some collapsing structure on a hidden coast. A low hum on the radio that could be an automated beacon, looping the same message long after the operator died. Once, very late at night, I catch a human voice on the radio band. A woman speaking in a language I barely know, reciting coordinates and something that sounds like instructions. The signal fades before I can find paper and write them down. The silence after that feels heavier than usual. I stay busy because the alternative is staring at the wall and asking what the point of any of this is. I inventory again. I check expiration dates, even when I know most of them passed before the outbreak even started. I clean my tools. I reinforce weak points with scrap. I drill new holes for drainage where water collects on deck. I throw dead items overboard to reduce clutter and weight. The ship may be drifting, but it is not dead weight to me. It is a project that never ends. 90 days after the horn blast that sent the first survivors running, I stand on the bridge deck again. The sun hangs low over a calm sea. There is no land in sight. No boats. Just the long, slow swell, the rusted rail under my hands, and the quiet thudding from some far interior door where one more infected spends its days hitting the same spot over and over without understanding what it wants. I think about that young guy on the rope. The way he looked up at me with anger that had no place to go. Somewhere out there he might be telling a story about a madman who lives on a ghost ship and uses the dead as shields. If he is still alive, maybe he warns others away from this area. Maybe he comes back one day with something bigger than an inflatable. Maybe not. I look at my hands. There is scar tissue on my knuckles now, where skin tore from hitting bone. My nails are short and cracked from work. There is a faint line along my palm from where the flare gun recoiled wrong one time and cut me. I barely remember what my hands used to look like before all this. I do not feel like a hero. I do not even feel smart most days. I feel tired and stubborn and unwilling to step aside for anyone else who wants what is left of this place. The world outside collapsed into roads full of broken cars and houses full of old photographs. Out here, I have steel, food, water, and distance from most of the madness on land. That comes with its own cost. If somebody finds this ship years from now, if anyone ever steps onto this deck when the infected have finally rotted into nothing and the waves have finished chewing the paint off the hull, maybe he will walk through the halls and see the red paint lines, the sealed doors, the map on the cabin wall with crosses and circles. He might think this layout came from some professional crew desperately following procedure to the end. It did not. It came from one worn-out mariner hand learning, step by step, what evil he was willing to do to keep breathing. For now, I keep watching the water. I keep listening for new engines. I keep checking the seals on the doors that still matter. The world boiled down to that simple list feels harsh, but clear. If another boat shows up tomorrow, I will decide what to do again in that moment. I do not promise I will be kind. I do not promise I will share. I only promise that I will not give this ship up easily. And that's where we'll stop for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me how the story hit you. What moments worked, what didn't, and what you'd want to hear next. And a big thank you to everyone supporting the channel, especially with extra membership. Carlos Herrera, Dominique Johnson, The Great Anywho, Jadala, Madam Midnight, Deborah Powell, William Blackwell, TJR, You keep this project alive. Until next time, survivor. Jack's Nightmares signing off.